Good evening. Steve Beck and Ellis Starr joining you tonight ahead of the Fountain of Youth card at Gulfstream on Saturday, March 1st, Ellis, and it really feels like things get serious this weekend. Good evening.
Good evening, Steve. Yeah, this is a fantastic card and a fast and firm card with, I think, very little chance of rain. And, of course, it really does start to feel like we're getting close. What is it, like 12 weeks to Derby? And the big races are now going to be coming hot and heavy.
Let's get into the Fountain of Youth.
So I see three horses here. I can't make the case that the projector does that Strike Power is going to have the lead. I think there's going to be a really hot pace here, and I'm going to start with a horse that I really like a lot, and that's the 5 Storm Runner. This also is our base race of the week. Some may have already seen the article. Storm Runner, for me, he's 2 for 2 in dirt routes. He came in an off-turf race here. He ran decently on the turf. Off-dirt race, November at Churchill, mile 16th, won by 4.5. Got an 87 figure. Took a couple months off, came back and ran badly, and then voila. And that was on the turf. Back on the dirt, fast dirt, Gulfstream, the distance of this race, just gamely opened up, got a little tired late, a little green, got a 111 figure. Now, the perspective on this, and the figure's not the end-all for me because you have to assess the horse's form, but the perspective is when you look at the horses that are going to be favored, Strike Power, who I think also has a pace problem, he won the Swale with a 111. When you look at the favorite, Good Magic, who Breeders' Cup 109, that was in the fall, so he's probably easily going to surpass 110 if he doesn't need a race. Those are the three best horses in the race, fastest on figure scale. And you've got this guy here who has the right style, who doesn't have the 4 months off as Good Magic does, and who is 2 for 2 on dirt off a great figure. Now, he could regress off it, no question, and Saez is, of course, getting off to ride Strike Power, who is agent and he thinks is the better horse. But Storm Power, for me, looks good on all issues. One more thing is very interesting for me, Steve, is that Roman's horses all worked, I don't know if they worked in company or not, but they all worked on February 24th. They all worked 5 furlongs. Of the three, this was the fastest by far. It was 59 flat of his 3 horses, 4th best of 39. Don't know if he does it naturally because his other works were fast before, but you see 4 furlongs, but not 5 furlong works in sub-minute. And so that's interesting for me. I'm not going to completely knock Good Magic, and I'm a little concerned about layoff into a route, but when you look at a guy like Brown, who we're just looking at again, just to say who trainers you can do this with and not, Brown, last 2 years, dirt route, 60 to 180, 13 for 39. I mean, that's a 33% win rate at 60 to 180. He's also great for 90 to 250, which I also have a separate one I don't need to get into, but he certainly can get his horses ready. By the way, as a side note, this kind of statistic was what led me to pick Bravazzo in the Risen Star as article-based race of the week in America's Best Racing a few weeks ago, because Lucas, and I found the stat we were talking about before we went on air, Lucas overall for the last 2 years in routes wins 11% of his dirt routes. But in his dirt route second off a layoff, he was 8 for 34, which is 24%. So something about second off a layoff for Lucas, maybe it's just the horse's natural progression second off a layoff, but that was significant. Other horses, of course, I can't knock. 3-drop Billy, 5 of 6, first or second in his career, excluding the Breeders' Cup, second off a layoff. His figure's a little low, so he's going to need to improve quite a bit, but he can. Gotta Go, who ran second to Strike Power when Strike Power had an easy lead, and he's going to get a different scenario today. That was a decent figure. He's also second off a layoff. He's a horse I'm absolutely not going to leave off my exotic tickets. I might make a small win bet on him. Marconi, he's a half-brother. For those who don't know, the Mucho Macho Man. I liked him a lot in the Withers. He just kind of gawked out of the gate like he usually does. One of these days, the light bulb's going to go on, and he's going to run big, but you got Fletcher and Castellano at 8-1. And the last is He Takes Charge, and he's coming off a maiden win. We can still make the jump from maiden to stake off a 99 figure and a great improving pattern here for Cassie, and I think he's kind of interesting as well. So when we get to the pick 4, if we do, I'm going to go 6 deep. I'm not going to let anybody beat me in this race, but my top pick, without a doubt, is going to be Storm Runner, Steve.
Storm Runner And there's any number of horses that when you look at, particularly at the 2-year-old form and some of the common running lines at this time of year, one of the things I love seeing are horses that I'm sort of emotionally committed to, that are exiting races that I liked, and that race on the undercard on the weekend of February 3rd, on the Holy Bull weekend. That race with Storm Runner and Mississippi, and if you remember, Mississippi had been drawn poorly in the Holy Bull, and so Cassie opted for the Sunday allowance race, and that was this race. And Storm Runner jumped up in his second start as a 3-year-old and really made considerable progress. And of course, he's yet another one of these horses we're seeing at this time of year that started out as a turf horse and is actually proving out as a better horse on the dirt. And we'll talk about He Takes Charge on this topic too, a horse that Cassie started on the grass at Saratoga in some very elite company and has really found himself in these 3 races, December, January, February, on the dirt and has been advancing the whole time. And these are horses that are going to get their chances on the dirt. And that race with Mississippi is to me, a standout race. It's absolutely as good, almost as what you saw from Audible and Free Drop Billy the day before in the Holy Bull. And one thing that you do see that you should really take notice when you're looking at beaten lengths and looking at fields and the way they separate, when you see horses like Audible and Free Drop Billy that are 6, 7, 8 lengths clear of third, that's usually the sign that the horses up on the front end of the chart are quite good. And you have the same scenario here where Storm Runner and Mississippi absolutely distanced themselves from a good field behind them. And that's usually indication that these are serious horses. And Mississippi is pointing for the Rebel, so you can watch for him in a couple of weeks at Oaklawn. But I absolutely agree that if you want to go find a price or two, horses like Storm Runner and He Takes Charge, they're going to have terrific mid-pack and just off the pace type trips. And that's what I want too, Ellis, as you pointed out, when you look at the pace projector, when you see those horses out front, the horses that are stretching from 6 and 7 furlongs, Machismo and of course Storm, not Storm, but Strike Power. When you see horses like that, you're guaranteed that the pace is going to get prompted. And there's every indication when you fold in Promises Fulfilled, I don't see what Irad Ortiz can do except go forward, and he's going to prompt as well from the outside. So I agree. When you want horses that are going to be tucked behind the speed and horses that are going to be coming from, at the very least, from the mid-pack range. Gulfstream, not a great track to close from the clouds. I really have nothing clever. I think you pretty much cornered this. I'll key off of Good Magic, who I have to respect the way Chad Brown brings the horse back. He's only going to make 2 starts before Derby, and so you better believe that Chad Brown will have him ready to go. Free Drop Billy, other than the Breeders' Cup, the problematic trip that he had, and a little inexplicable, frankly. There's never really been an excuse or a way to figure out why he didn't run better in the juvenile. But other than that, he's done everything that Dale Romans has asked. Price-wise, as we just touched on, I definitely want Storm Runner, and I want He Takes Charge. Another step forward from He Takes Charge, saving ground every step down inside. He makes a lot of sense to me. The horse that I am intrigued by was Marconi, and I like him when we get to 1 mile and an eighth. But I find this a little strange that Fletcher is backing him up to 1 mile and a 16th. He's a plotting type, and typically that hasn't played well at Gulfstream in this scenario. You do need a turn of foot, and I think maybe you wait for Marconi when he runs back again at 1 mile and an eighth in his start after this. I kind of liked him coming into the Withers, and I didn't see much finish, and I don't see why bringing him to South Florida right now. This has never been a great gambit either, bringing a horse from the cold weather into the warm. So I'll wait on Marconi.
Let me
talk about
Well, I was going to just say about Marconi, I think I see what Fletcher's doing here. You've got a horse who's not great out of the gate, who probably doesn't train that good, and you're going to race him into shape. Rather than give him another race at New York when you never know how the weather's going to be, this could be just 2 sprints into the Florida Derby or 2 sprints into the Wood. That's the only reason I could see him.
Yeah.
If he gets points, he gets points. But he's going to be gunning for whatever that next start is for the 50 or 100 points for the winner.
Well, and agreed, because the Gotham, with the Gotham next Saturday, it's a turn back to 1 mile. That's not going to do him any good. I mean, I agree that he wants to keep him around 2 turns, but if he's let's say mid pack on Saturday, there'll be people that'll immediately kind of write him off. I would not do that. I would look for him when he goes back to 9 furlongs. It's a terrific group, and there's horses in here, that are going to be 6th, 7th, and 8th that are nice horses. This is one of the interesting parts of this. I mean, we'll see about horses like Strike Power, who I get the sense is a 1-turn horse, but you understand why Hennig is going to give him the opportunity. That Ron Paolucci, who bought Machismo, that Paolucci is going to do everything he can to get him to the Derby. But I think ultimately he'll prove out as a 1-turn horse as well. It got to go, as you mentioned. He's a wild card in here, and I am curious if Ian Wilkes learned much from McCracken, and because there's already a bit of a McCracken look to this horse, and we'll see. Back out 2 turns if it's gonna end up being that he's a horse that wants elongated sprints, 7/8 and a 1-turn mile. That's the hint that I'm getting from him as well. So let's look for horses that are proven at this 1 mile and a 16th distance, and that are going to sit behind the speed, because I think that's the trip that you're going to want.
I agree completely with this one. Now, got to go. One comment was interesting that I just noticed back here. He won the 1-turn mile street sense in his 3rd start, and I forgot the time he beat Bravazzo. So there's something interesting to note as well in his path.